Did the miracles of Jesus work to fulfill the signs of the coming Messiah? Are you ready to face the truth? Face the Truth Live is the monthly podcast from the Truth Church of Olathe, Kansas, with our pastor and Bible teacher, Bishop Gregory Riggin. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Face the Truth. Today, we have a special guest, Iran Solomon, a renowned tour guide from Israel, joining Bishop Riggin and the Truth Church for a live recording to present the life of Jesus and the many notable miracles that were performed in the Holy Land. You will hear Iran describe miracles that we read about in the Bible, and then add the context that we miss without the Jewish perspective. This is more than an audio tour of an important area in Israel. Iran presents very important details that make the locations come alive by sharing their history and the impact of God's marvelous plan to truly change the world with His chosen people. Everywhere that Jesus traveled, and the miracles that He did were for a purpose. Listen in as Iran takes the listeners on a journey through the Scriptures and shows how the miracles of Jesus were a fulfillment to the Old Testament prophets.
Well, as I have said, and for those that are joining us online who have not heard me say this in our church service, I first met Iran in 2013. My wife and I had the privilege of making a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. It was my first time to Israel. And Pastor Daniel Stevens and his wife and my wife and I went with a group of pastors. I think that we were the only Pentecostal pastors on that trip, if I remember correctly. But we went, and Iran was our tour guide. And I've talked to the church about how impressed I was with a couple of things. One was his deep knowledge of the Scripture. And I was so deeply impressed because he knew so much about so many things, and even he probably doesn't remember because he takes so many tour groups, but there were even times that I pulled him aside and picked his brain a little bit about some things, and it was obvious that his knowledge of the Scripture far superseded just the places he was going to take us to. And I appreciated that. And then the second thing was, and I was telling him this at lunch today, is I was just impressed with his absolute honesty, because I have friends that have gone to Israel and have had tour guides that would tell them whatever they thought that the group wanted to hear. I've actually had people share pictures with me and say, our guide told us this was the very spot where Jesus fell when He was carrying the cross. Well, problem number one is the Bible doesn't say He fell. So that's kind of a Catholic tradition. The second thing is, how in the world would you find that spot after 2,000 years? I've had others share pictures of trees on the way to Jericho and say, this is the very tree that Zacchaeus climbed in. They can't know those things. And what I appreciated about Iran is he would just tell us, there's a tradition that says. In fact, he had a grading system of A, B, or C. He said, if I tell you it's a C site, then basically all we have is tradition. He said, if I tell you it's a B site, then we've got some history to back it up. And if I tell you it's an A site, then we're pretty sure about this location being what we say it is. And I appreciated that. I wanted to know, and as much as I wanted to see all these things I'd heard about, I didn't want to see a false place and be told it was the true place. And so I just appreciated that. And then I had the opportunity in 2019 to go back again with a friend, and they did not use Iran as the tour guide. And boy, could I tell the difference in the things that we were told, the places that we went, and it just made me appreciate Iran so much more. And when we set up to do a tour for the church, was supposed to have been this year, I knew immediately I didn't want anybody else taking us but Iran. Because I just absolutely trusted him. And so we set it up with him to do it. And of course, then October 7th happened, and we ended up having to cancel that tour. But Lord willing, we're praying for a resolution in Israel. But I told him at lunch today, I don't want it to just be resolved. I want it to be resolved right. I don't want them to just accept some kind of peace terms and then still have to keep living under threat. I want it solved. And but we are praying, and the Bible tells us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And we are praying. But we're so honored to have him, got to meet his wife, and it is a great honor and privilege for me to bring to you Iran Solomon. Why don't we give him a good welcome? We're glad to have him here. Thank you so much for coming.
Wow. I'm very honored to be here tonight. Thank you so much for inviting me, Pastor Greg, Rhonda. It's a true honor, my first time to be at Kansas City. You have a beautiful town. I'm just going to say a few words about what my family and myself are doing now. We live in Israel. We live in the Golan. Golan is the northern east side of the country, also known as Bashan. And we live probably less than 8 miles from the Syrian border. And when October 7th started, in Israel, we thought that we might have a sudden attack. There is kids over here, so I'm going to use I'm going to choose my words. But we thought that the Hezbollah from Lebanon and in Syria, in the last 10 years, the country fell into a civil war, and there is 10,000s of Shia militia forces, and they were plotting to do to us what Hamas did on October 7th. And some people, again, I'm just the tour guide, I'm not in charge of the miracles department. But some people will tell you that the miracle of October 7th, that our enemies didn't act as one. If the Shia militias in Syria and the Hezbollah forces from Lebanon would invade on the same day to Israel, we'd be in a very difficult situation. So what happened next is more than 350,000 people joined the army in the next 2 days, and I did as well. And in Israel, we're allowed to have 1 handgun per person. And I purchased some kit for my handgun, so that will allow me with a laser pointer and special aims, so I can protect myself and my family. And when my friends in my village saw me carrying that, they asked me, hey, where did you get it? And I said, I bought it. How much it cost you? And I told them the amount, and they told me, all right, I would like it, but I cannot afford it. And then I said, really? You need the weapon and you cannot afford it? And who knows what's going tomorrow? We felt like bleeding fish in the water. I said I might be able to help. And I sent an email, and I think I posted something on Facebook. I almost lost my Facebook account because of that. But my American friends donate a big amount of money, and we got those weapon kits to everyone in the village that asked for it. And we got medical supply, and we sent it to all the 33 villages in the Golan Heights. And we got radio connections, and we supply everybody who needs to be ready. And that's how we stood, 3 or 2 weeks after we've been ready for everything. I think it was amazing to know that so many people care about the Jewish people. Not long ago, during the Holocaust, Nobody was standing for us. And today we have our army, we have our country, and Israel is getting stronger day by day. We are becoming a regional power. The general product in Israel is 55,000 American dollars per year and growing. We have a Jewish baby boom. We are the only developed country in the world that have a birth rate of 3.1 kids per Jewish woman. It means that today there are 10 million people in Israel, and the UN calculate that by the end of this century, God willing, we will triple our numbers. Okay? We'll be 3 times more Jews. So we are closing the gap of what happened with the Holocaust. And the next century is going to be the Jewish century. And probably by the end of this decade, we're talking about 2030, it's going to be a very significant moment in the history of the Jewish people and have a lot of theological application, both on the Christian world and the Jewish world. We will have the majority of the Jewish people back in their land by 2030. Okay, the majority of the Jewish people will be back in their land, and this is since the last 2,600 years. Okay, and have a lot of theological applications, both on the Christian side and the Jewish side. Just for example, according to the Jewish law, you must celebrate the Jubilee and the sabbatical year only when you have the majority of the people in your land, and there is a lot of other applications. So after 6 months volunteering in the army don't need me anymore. My wife and myself are bringing pilgrims groups to Israel, and we started our own business a few years ago. So today, most of my groups are my own groups. Very rarely I'm working with other agents, and we need to keep in touch with our friends here in America. So after 6 months being in the army in the local community area, we decided it's time to come here, and we will be here for a few more months. We enjoying your beautiful national parks. We got our camping gear and our tents and the sleeping bags. And we drove all the way from Washington. We visited Glacier Park by the Canadian border. We visited our friends in Montana. What else? Yellowstone, of course, and Arches, Canyonlands, Grand Canyon, Teton, Grand Teton, and eventually Zion. It was very awkward to be at Zion. Everybody asked me where you're from. I'm from Zion. And now we will do 5 weeks of teaching in churches in the center of America. When my groups come to Israel, I like to tell them that I hate tourists, because by coming to Israel, you are not a tourist. You are not coming to see the sights. You're coming for a spiritual journey, and you're coming to follow the footsteps of Yeshua. So that's what we do in our tour. And every year we have more and more discoveries, and we live in a very special time. Yes, I know that in Christmas, yes, they use your grandparents or your ancestors used to say, long, long time ago, yes, in a far, far away. So today you can go far, far away with a simple flight. Okay, maybe not now, maybe later. But that's the first time in the history that you can make this journey and come to Israel. I think it's a must for every Christian believer. And I think that by coming there, you're not just representing yourself, but you're also representing your ancestors. You're fulfilling not just your dream, but also their dream. And I feel the same when I'm here with you, representing my ancestors and not just myself. Okay, let's start. Jesus came to the Sea of Galilee. I promise you I will do a short introduction about the Sea of Galilee before we speak about Capernaum. So here it is. Jesus came to the region of the Sea of Galilee. Let me show you a picture of it. Can you see it right here? That's the Sea of Galilee. the lowest freshwater lake in the whole world. It's actually minus 650 feet under the sea level. And Jesus, this place that you see right now is by far the most famous landscape in the whole world. I'm not exaggerating. By far the most famous landscape in the whole world, definitely the most painted one in the history of art. And the reason for that is Jesus. Jesus was active in this area for almost 3 years in his life between two major events: being baptized at the Jordan River, being immersed at the Jordan River by Yohanan the preacher, or baptized at the Jordan River by John the Baptist, and the crucifixion in Jerusalem. For 3 years he was active in this area, preaching, performing miracles, comforting the people. So this is how you start your Israel journey. Second day, after you rest a little bit, that's what you see, God willing, from the outside of your hotel. And I want to say a few words about why this area is so important, and I hope you'll remember it. The first thing you want to remember is location, location, location. Okay? Location, location, location. Israel, as you can see it in that map, that's the Middle East. Okay? More correct to say that's the west corner of Asia. Today we call it the Middle East. But this is the west corner of Asia. And Israel is a narrow strip between the sea on one side and the Arabian desert on the other side. And in the ancient times, the only way to cross from Europe, let me see it here. Can I stay here? All right. You'll have to find it. The only way to cross from Europe or from Asia down to Africa will be to go through the Holy Land. You see? So if you want to go from Babylonia, Mesopotamia, down to Alexandria, you have to go for Israel. So the story of Israel is location, location, location. And the number one economic factor will be trade. Yes? How Solomon, King Solomon for you, became so rich? Trade. How Herods became so rich? Trade. There are international trade routes that comes from all directions. The Silk Route comes from China and come to Israel. The Spice Route comes from Yemen, from the southern part of Arabia, and come to Israel. The King's Highway and the Via Maris starts at Egypt and goes for Israel. So you can think about the Holy Land as essential crossroad of the most important international trade routes of the ancient world. So far, so good? Now, those routes were built for armies. They were used by merchants. And believe it or not, back then there was no TV, no radio, no internet, no newspapers. So those merchants that travel those routes carry the news with them from one road station to the next one. So when Jesus came to the Sea of Galilee, he was right on the Via Maris, by the way of the sea. And preaching them, the gospel can travel to all directions. To the Sumerians, to the Decapolis, to Europe, to Asia, to Africa. So why Jesus came over, or what's the benefit of there? Location, location, location. The trade routes can take everything. Now, the lake is a part of the junction. To go from one side of the lake to the other side, you take the boat. And that reminds me about the first disciples. Come with me and I'll make you fishermen of men. Why a fisherman can be a good disciple? Because those fishermen were not just fishing, they were also transporting people from one side of the lake to the other. So you can think about them as bus drivers or tour guides, because they taking people with them. They know how to speak to the non-Jews. They know Greek. They know probably some Latin. They know Aramaic. They know Hebrew. They know how to communicate with people, and they have the time. Yes? How the pastors call it? You have what we call a captive audience. You got people on the boat. Let me tell you about Jesus. What are they going to do? Sorry, I'm trying to wake you up. So, location, location, location. The lake is a part of the junction. The disciples are fishermen. They also know how to communicate with people. And I want to add to that Jesus was not hiding from anyone. Ladies and gentlemen, again, I was not ready for that. But what I want you to see from here, this is the area of the Sea of Galilee. This is the northern part. You can see Capernaum is at the northest point of the Sea of Galilee. In Jesus' time, the east side of the Sea of Galilee was the Jewish side. And the west side of the Sea of Galilee was the Jewish side. And the east side was the non-Jewish side. Okay? And I want you to remember that when you read the Gospel, especially at the Gospel of Mark, because you read about Jesus saying, let us go to the other side. You remember that? Now, when you'll be there, you'll understand that one side is the Jewish side and the other side is the non-Jewish side. It's two different territories. And this geographical movement from one side to the other, it's also a spiritual one. It's the gospel moving from the Jews to the non-Jews as well. And Jesus performed miracles, identical, almost equal miracles. In the Jewish side, feeding the 5,000s. In the non-Jewish side, feeding the 4,000s. You see? Casting the demon from the possessed man in the day of Shabbat and casting the demons on the other side. And we read about it. Last thing I want to tell you about the region of the Sea of Galilee, that Jesus was no hiding from anyone. In Jesus' time, and again, if you look at the map, the territory was divided by the Romans to the three sons of Herod the Great. And the Sea of Galilee actually was divided between three different territories. Herod Antipas was on that side, Philippus was on the other side, Decapolis at the southeastern side, and the two sons of Herod were living right here. One of them was living at Tiberias. If you see the city of Tiberias on the west side, the capital city of the area, that's where Herod Antipas, that was his capital. That's the same guy that beheaded John the Baptist. And on the other side, you have the city of Julias, Bethsaida. That's the winter capital of Philippus. So when Jesus did all those miracles, he did it right under the nose of the two sons of Herod. Okay? It was no hiding from anyone. He did it right under their nose. They heard, knew everything that he did. And now we want to move to, here it is. When Jesus heard that John had been put to prison, he withdrew to Galilee. Leaving Nazareth, he went and lived in Capernaum, which was by the lake in the area of Zebulun and Naphtali. So why I chose to speak about Capernaum? Because I live right next to it. 10 minutes. That's where my kids go to the sea. Yes, we're homeschooling our kids, so every Monday, that's where the kids going, to the Sea of Galilee. to enjoy the sea, to enjoy the lake. But the main reason, it's because Capernaum is so important. Actually, it's second only to Jerusalem. Mentioned 16 times in the Gospels, second only to Jerusalem. And if you count the miracles in the three synoptic Gospels, 30 miracles, 10 out of the 30, 1/3 of the miracles that Jesus performed made in Capernaum. Okay? This is where Jesus cast the demon from the possessed man in the day of Shabbat. This is where Jesus healed Peter's mother-in-law. This is where Jesus healed the paralytic man when they had to break the roof. This is where Jesus healed the slave of the Roman centurion who built the synagogue for the Jews. This is where Jesus sent Peter to go and to catch a fish, and they found the coin inside. This is where Jesus resurrected the daughter of Jairus, the head of the synagogue. Yes, even this didn't convince them. Yes. And this is where Jesus healed the lames and the blinds, 2 blind people. All those miracles, and probably more that were not written, all of them happened at Capernaum. So what we're going to do in the next 25 minutes, yes, we will try to show you a little bit about Capernaum, and we want to speak about the meaning of those miracles. Okay? What's behind them? What's so special about those specific miracles? All right. So this is the Sea of Galilee. That's how Capernaum was first rediscovered at the 19th century, at the end of the 19th century. You can see the ruins over there. This is how Capernaum looks today. By the way, maybe I should explain about the meaning of the name Capernaum. When I started to guide, it was very hard for me to pronounce it. Capernaum. How you got this Capernaum? It's Kfar. Do you want to try and say it? Kfar Nahum. You need a ch, Nahum. And the reason why I make you do that, because the names are important, and the village is a Kfar. Nahum is somebody's name, but Nahum have another meaning to it. Nahum means consolation. When Isaiah, or comforting, yes, comforting or consulting, when Isaiah wants to say, comfort, comfort my people, he said, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. And Noach is called Noach because he comforted the people from the agony of the land. Okay? But in the biblical connection, consolation also means salvation. As we read in the gospel, Simon the righteous was waiting for the consolation of Jerusalem. He was waiting for the Messiah, for the salvation. So you can think about Capernaum as the village of salvation. How's that? Now it's got an extra meaning to it. But remember that Jesus rebuked them and told them, woe to you, Capernaum, at the end of the days will be lighter to Sodom and Gomorrah than to you. You, Capernaum, you think you're going up to heaven? Maybe it was a play on words. Like your name. No, you're going down to hell. So here we explained the name, the village of Capernaum, and I also forgot to tell you that somebody lived in Capernaum. You remember Matthew? From the Gospel of Matthew? He was the tax collector over there. You know who else lived there? Maybe you can help me? Maybe the kids can help me. Who lived in Capernaum? I surprise you, eh? Hometown of one of the disciples at Capernaum. That's what Bible quiz for you. Peter and probably his brother Andre were living at Capernaum as well. Okay, so what you see over here is what you will see at Capernaum. Actually, you can see the red circle. That's the synagogue. Later, it became a church synagogue. In the middle, in the yellow circle, you can see the private homes. Maybe that's Matthew used to live. And you can see kind of a structure with a round or 8 faces, octagonal structure around it. This, in the center of it, it's the house of Peter. So I want to speak quickly about that. This is the synagogue that you see today. This synagogue, unfortunately, is not from the time of Jesus. It was built later by a Messianic Jew, probably, by money from the Roman Empire. But under this synagogue, we found Jesus' synagogue. And this is definitely one of the highlights of your tour, because in this synagogue, Jesus started his ministry. According to the Gospel of Mark, he was in a hurry for the synagogue. Yes? Yes, that's what Jews are doing on Friday. Their hurries to the synagogue on the day of Shabbat. And he came to the synagogue, and the impure spirit recognized Jesus to be the Holy One. And Jesus cast the demon from the possessed man in the day of Shabbat, beginning of Jesus' ministry. And this is also where Jesus preached, I am the bread of life. When he came back, yes, he taught there, I am the bread of life. And this is known as Jesus' synagogue. You want to meet Jesus? Yes? You can come next Shabbat. He's teaching there every Shabbat. That's his synagogue. It was known as his synagogue. This is one thing I wanted to show you. This is kind of incredible discovery. I don't think you'll see it anywhere. Apparently, we found the architectural elements from first century Jesus time synagogue. You know where they've been all this time? They've been put in the parking lot to separate the cars. So yes, until today, if you go to Capernaum, I'm the only crazy tour guide that actually stopped his group before we get into the site in the parking lot. And everybody just passing me, why are you doing there? But that's the thing. So it's in the parking lot, and it's in the cactus garden over there. And that was somewhere in the Roman Catholic storage rooms, and they took it out. But this is a menorah. You can see a 7 branches menorah engraved on basalt rock, and this is from Jesus Synagogue, 99%. How cool is that? This menorah was there when Jesus was teaching, I am the bread of life. Again, to the best of our knowledge, 99%, but this is dated to the 1st century, and I just saw it a year ago, was the first time I ever seen it. Okay, this is, I want to show you the house of Peter's mother-in-law. You can't see much from this picture, but there is a house over there, private home, and what happened is that Jesus moved from the synagogue to the house. So he moved from the public building to the private building. And over there, he healed Peter's mother-in-law. What's special about this, it's because after Jesus ascended to heaven, the first disciples came back to this house, and that became the earliest church, or the earliest Domos Ecclesia, house of gathering. And the archaeologists found a very thick layer of plaster with hundreds of religious graffiti, and remain of communion meals and oil lamps that were used to study and meditate through the night. And all that, probably most likely, from the end of the 1st century. So already 40 years or 50 years after the time of Jesus, already then people were worshiping in this house. So super cool. So you can think about this place as the mother of all churches. And from the archaeological perspective, that's the only place that in Israel, I mean, the tour guides and the churches will tell you different things, okay? But I'm standing behind my words. It's recorded. No other church in Israel can prove that the tradition over there is going back to the time of Jesus. We wish, maybe, but nobody can prove it. This is probably the only place that you can see the tradition, continuity of this tradition, almost from the time of Christ until our days. And it's also telling us that maybe in other places it's true as well, but that's the only place that we have the proof. Okay? So this is the 2 highlights that we're not going to speak about it right now. We want to move to the scriptures, because I promise I tell you about the meaning of those scriptures. So, all this happened after John had put to prison. I want to read with you Matthew 11, 1 through 6. And that's going to be the focus of our teaching. Another 15 minutes, I think. After Jesus had finished instructing his 12 disciples, he went on from there to teach and preach in the towns of Galilee. When John, who was in prison, heard about the deeds of the Messiah, he sent his disciples to ask him, "Are you the one who is to come, or should we expect someone else?" And Jesus replied, "Go back and report to John what you hear and see. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cleansed, and the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is proclaimed to the poor. Blessed is anyone who does not stumble on account of me." So we want to talk about this very important scripture. All this happened after John had been put to prison. And John sent two people to ask, "Are you the one we've been waiting for?" So we want to answer those two questions. The first question will be, who is John? The second question will be, who is the one we've been waiting for? Okay? So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm trying to wake you up. Who is John? Yes? And as a good tour guide, I only ask, as a good tour guide should do, it's only to ask questions that you may know the answers. All right? So who is John? By spirit, who is John? Give you a hint over here. Who's? Elijah. I'll give you a big hint over here. But how do you know? Exactly. Thank you, sir. Because Jesus said so. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, John is Elijah. And how do we know it? Because Jesus said so. Okay? He actually said it twice. After Jesus proved to them who he is on the Mount of Transfiguration, they asked him, "You are the one, where is Elijah?" And Jesus told them, Elijah already came. It was John. You see? Now, why the disciples asked about Elijah? Ladies and gentlemen, the Old Testament ends at the book of Malachi. And the last phrase of the last book of the Old Testament, yes, you have it in your papers, Malachi 4:4-6, the great day of the Lord. Yes? "Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes." You see? The last phrase of the Old Testament tells us that Elijah will come before the great day of the Lord. So when the disciples understood that Jesus is the one they've been waiting for, they asked Jesus, "If you are the one, where is Elijah?" And Jesus told them, "He already came, but people didn't recognize him." Okay? Yes? Wait a minute. How do you know it's Elijah? There was no Facebook. There was no pictures. I'm not sure if they had the drawing of Elijah. So how do you know? Interesting. That's an interesting comment. That the only figure in the Old Testament that the Bible gives us his description, the only figure in the Old Testament that the Bible tells us how he looks like, yes, the appearance, is Elijah. Somebody was looking for Elijah and we got the description. We don't know how Moses looked like. We don't know how Joshua don't look like. Yes, we don't know how Aaron looked like. But we do know how Elijah looked like. Yes? Eliyahu. My God is Jeho Eliyahu. You said it Elijah, but Eliyahu. Okay? And the only figure at the New Testament that we have the description is John. We don't know how Jesus looked like. Yes? Unless you watch this TV series. What's but The Chosen. You don't know how Peter looked like, but we do know how John looked like. And guess what? Yes? They look the same. Same description. Yes? Same description. A man wearing a girdle of leather with a camel hair. Yes, it's Elijah. So they look the same. They appear in the same place. And now we know why Elijah, and you say it correctly, the announcer, the forerunner. And now we want to continue about who is Jesus. Who is the one we've been waiting for? So John sent two people to Jesus. Are you the one we've been waiting for, or shall we expect somebody else? And I want to take you to the book of Acts to answer who is the one we've been waiting for. As a tour guide, I will never dare to give you my own interpretation because I work with different denominations. Yes? I work with Catholic groups, I work with Protestant groups, evangelical groups. I have to stick to the Bible. I can get in trouble. And I cannot give you my own words, yes? So what I can do is just to emphasize what's in the scripture. So for that, we want to read from the book of Acts chapter 3, 22 to 23. This is Peter and John next to him preaching at the portico of Solomon at the temple. Okay, first they came to the temple to prayer, afternoon. They healed by the name of Jesus the lame man that was sitting all those years next to the beautiful gate. And he came with them, and everybody were amazed and ran inside. And that was amazing crowd and a great opportunity for Peter to explain the Jewish people about Jesus. And what he told them is that Jesus is the one that God talked about. Yes, and Moses said, the Lord God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your brothers. You should listen to him in whatever he tells you. And it shall be that every soul who does not listen to the prophet shall be destroyed from the people. So what Peter is telling you to do is to go and read Deuteronomy 18:18. This is a direct quote from Deuteronomy 18:18, but I want to refer to the whole chapter over there because the chapter over there speaks about the prophet. Are you still with me? Yes? What we learn from Deuteronomy 18 about the prophet. First of all, very interesting, we learned that God don't need a prophet. We need a prophet. Again, from the scriptures. When we stood before God at Mount Sinai, it was impossible to stand in his presence. So the people asked for mediator, and he gave them the prophets. Okay? We need a mediator between us and God. And we learn that we need to listen to the prophet, but how do we know if the prophet is a true prophet or not? That's a very sensitive thing. Because a false prophet can lead you to wrong ways. So what the scriptures over there are telling you, that first the prophet have to prove himself with great signs. Second, he must teach according to the law of Moses. If he teach you something else, it's a false prophet. Okay? So what? And a false prophet need to be executed. All right? Now, when John sent two people to Jesus, he sent two witnesses. Go and ask Jesus, are you the one you've been waiting for, or shall we expect somebody else? So two eyes and hear witnesses. And what Jesus is telling, he's not saying, yes, I'm the one. What is he saying? Yes? Let's read it again with your permission. Go and tell John what you heard and saw. Yes? Go and report. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is proclaimed to the poor. This is a list of 6 specific miracles. And if you want to remember one thing from this teaching, what's the purpose of those miracles? Yes, the main purpose maybe. Those are signs that proves that he is the one. Okay? And people supposed to know those signs. Today, We might, lost in the time, but if you read the book of Isaiah, yes, it's right there. It's in the book of Isaiah. And you read about, yes, you read about then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, Isaiah 35, 5 through 6, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. When shall lame men leap like a deer? Yes, and the tongue of the mute sing for joy. So we have this list of signs at the book of Isaiah, but not only then. Yes, we have an amazing discovery. First, we have it in the Apocrypha. That's another quote from the Testament of the tribes, the Testament of Judah. It's in your scriptures. Those books is not included in the Bible, but we also have the same list over there. Testament of Judah 25:4, and the poor because of God will come rich, and the hungry will swear, and the sick will get stronger, and the dead because of God will rise to life. And the last thing I want to tell you, and we're going to end with this, is the amazing discovery, probably the most amazing discovery of archaeology ever. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm sure you heard about the Dead Sea Scrolls. Yes? So you can see, this is a picture of the Dead Sea over there. You can see the upper picture is cave number 1. When the first scrolls were discovered, it's called also Qumran scrolls. The lower picture, it's cave number 4, where the scripture that I'm about to read was discovered. You can see the pottery vessel that contained one of those precious scrolls. And just because we read something from it, I want to talk very briefly about the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea is just the area where they were found. Some people call it the Temple Scrolls. But this is a complete library of ancient Jewish scriptures with the oldest biblical books ever to be discovered. We're talking about the book of Samuel and the book of Jeremiah from 200 and 250 BC. The oldest biblical books ever to discovered. We found all the books of the Bible. We found books that were not included, and we found other sectorial, or like one of my teacher, Professor Elior, like to say, it's like you clean your house before the Passover, you move the refrigerator, and you found another house. And this discovery changed a lot. So the things that I'm telling you, it's because of this discovery. It took the scholars about 70 years to understand what's in those scrolls. Okay, mainly because it was in the hands of the Jordanians, and there was a lot of damage was made during the discovery of those scrolls. People did bad things to it, but now you can actually get some insights for that. Okay, one more thing about those scrolls. Again, I'm not in charge of the miracles department, but it came to our hands on the same day, 29th of November, 1947, the same day that the UN, yes, decided or agreed to divide the land between the Jews and the Arabs. Yes, the Palestinians could have a state already then. On the same day, yes, 29th of November, we discovered those scrolls. And 11 scrolls were found in complete condition. And I want to show you the most, that's where they hold them today in the Shrine of the Book. You'll be there, yes, when you come to visit Israel. And I'm trying to buy a better, more, a better picture of it. That's the best I could find online. That's been given to me by the Israel Museum. This is the complete Isaiah scroll. We found 16 copies of Isaiah, and we found the complete great Isaiah scroll. So you can read, yes, how do you know that your Isaiah is the same book of Isaiah from Jesus' time? We found it. Yes. And you can read the words of Prophet Isaiah, consult, consult my people. Yes, your sins been repent. You can read it right over here. Every child in Israel can read it, simple Hebrew. Okay, so last thing before we end, I want to show you, this is from Isaiah, and this is from 4Q 521. This is 4, it stands for cave number 4. Q stands for Qumran. 521, this is the fragment number that was discovered there. And amazingly, we found that even the people of Qumran, yes, the sect of Qumran, or the Essenes, we're not sure, the sect of Qumran, they also held the same tradition about those 6 signs. Okay? The Spirit will hover over the poor. He will liberate the captives, restore the sight of the blind, strengthen the bent, for he will heal the wounded and revive the dead and bring good news to the poor. So, rings a bell? Okay? So this is not from the New Testament. That was found at 1947 at the cave number 4 at Qumran. So we have 3 scriptures all saying the same thing. And I want to end with what you will experience in Israel. I'll end with that. During doing this, Jesus came on Mount of Beatitudes, and he was teaching them the Sermon on the Mount. Is he teaching them a new Torah? This Sermon on the Mount that Jesus did, when you read it, is that a new Torah? We said that Jesus is the prophet. It's a preaching on the 10 Commandments. It's a preaching on the 10 Commandments. So Jesus performed those signs. He taught according to the law of Moses. But he rebuked the Sadducees, priests in the temple that exploited the people. And they wanted him to be crucified. You think that he's your Messiah? So they gave him to the Romans. Because the one word the Romans really hated, Messiah, means problems, means hope. So they crucified Jesus, trying to prove that he is not the one. You see? You think that this is your Messiah? Look at him. Can't be. He's a false Messiah. He is humiliated, tortured, dead on the cross. By crucifying him, they tried to prove that he is not the one, and his resurrection proves that he is. Thank you very much.
Well, do you feel like you learned something tonight? Learned several things, and I appreciate Iran. But there's so many things that he said tonight that I appreciate, and I meant to say this when I introduced him, but one of the things that I really appreciated and I've never even told him this, but in 2013 when I went, and again, he probably, because he's dealt with so many tours, he probably doesn't remember any of this, but obviously it was my first trip, and you know, the first things you always remember. And we were sitting at supper the last night of our tour, and the man who was in charge of the tour, it dawned on me as we were sitting there eating that we had not been to the upper room on our trip. And I was looking at the schedule for the next day. It was our final day there, and it wasn't on the schedule for that day. And so I went to the man in charge of the tour, and I said, "Are we not going to the upper room?" And he said, "Oh, no, we don't even know if it's really the real upper room, and so we don't have it on the schedule to go." And I guess he could see the look on my face. He said, "Is that important to you?" And I said, "Look, I'm a Pentecostal. If I go to Israel and don't see the upper room, my trip here is just not complete." And so he said, "Well, I'll see." He said, "I'll talk to someone and see if we can maybe find a taxi driver or somebody that could take you. We're going to have some free time tomorrow, and you can go on your own." And so I don't know how it all came about entirely. I know the next morning when we got up, we started for the bus, and the man in charge stopped me and he said, "Hey, we're going to the upper room first thing this morning." And I said, "Oh, really?" And he said, "Yes." And then I asked Iran about it, and he said, "Yes." He said, "When I found out that he wasn't taking you there," he said, I don't remember the exact words, but he had quite the conversation with the man saying, this is one of, if I remember right, one of the two most important sites in Christianity. And so he was the one who convinced the man in charge that we needed to go see the upper room. And so I have been grateful ever since that he went to bat for us and took us by. And I know the structure there is not first century. I understand, but it was just the significance somewhere in that vicinity. But being able to be there and go, it was important to me. And then again, just to endear me even further, when we were on the bus, as Iran does on the tours, usually on our trip over, these buses are equipped with microphones and speakers, and he would get the microphone and give us a little Bible lesson on the way to the sites we were going to help us to better appreciate where we're going. And I remember this so vividly. My wife and I were sitting on the front row that day. And so he asked us to read some scriptures on the way over. And we were on our way to the upper room. And he started us in the book of Ezekiel and talking about the new covenant that was to come. And then directed us over to Acts chapter 2. And gave us some real insight as to the importance of what happened at the upper room and the significance from even an Old Testament perspective of the new covenant being written in our hearts. And thankfully, the rest of the story is that the man in charge of our tour that day had actually asked me, standing there at the hotel before we ever left, when he said, we're going to the upper room. I said, well, that's great. And usually these sites, they would have somebody pre-picked to bring a little devotional at the site, and it was always the same 3 or 4 pastors that he knew. But this day, he just out of the clear blue asked me, would you be willing to bring the devotion at the upper room? I said, absolutely, I would. I would love to. And so when we got there, my devotion that day was that really the story of salvation is threefold. It's really a trilogy. If we look at the scriptures and the way things unfolded, the angel, going back to the Old Testament scriptures, said of Jesus that his name shall be Emmanuel, which is God with us. And that was the significance of Bethlehem. It was God with us. And then we had been to 2 different sites that different people in their opinions think may be the site of Calvary. And I said, whichever one it is, we've been to that site. And according to the Apostle Paul, the message of Calvary was God for us. But really, the trilogy doesn't end with just God with us and God for us until we get to the day of Pentecost. And then the message of Pentecost was God in us. And that's where God wrote that law. This is what so many people miss, even in so much of Christianity today, is that it is still God's intention for us to have that law, but to have it in our hearts. and for it to be written there, not on tables of stone as it was for Moses, but to be written in our hearts. But anyhow, I appreciate everything he had to say, and I really do look forward. I hope and pray things settle down enough that we can make that trip together as a church and go over and see these sites and have Iran as our tour guide, and let him give us even greater insight into the sites there that are so crucial to our story and where it all began for us. And so thank you so much, Iran. Thank you for carving out time to stop by, making that long drive yesterday to be here. And I do think it's been well worth our time to come.
Thank you, Bishop Riggin, and thank you to everyone who has joined us for today's Face the Truth Live event. To the faithful listeners of the Face the Truth podcast, we have a special request. Please help us pray for direction for this podcast. Many listeners have reached out to share how this podcast has provided a benefit to them. We have continually adapted to the needs of the Truth Church and our listeners. We are praying for God's direction to help this podcast address the greatest needs of our time. And with that, we want you to know that we are here to help you in any way that we can. If there is anything we can do for you, please don't hesitate to contact us. Send your prayer requests to prayer@olathetruth.com. That's prayer@olathetruth.com. If you live in the Kansas City metropolitan area and do not have a home church, we invite you to join us for our services this week: Sunday morning at 10 a.m., Sunday evening at 6 p.m., Tuesday evening at 7:30 p.m. For those who cannot attend, we will provide a live stream on our Facebook page, our YouTube page, and our website, olathetruth.com/live. Until our next Face the Truth Live event, take care and God bless.